The sky was dark and heavy with dust. The wind howled across the cracked surface of the desert planet. Storm clouds rolled over the jagged horizon like angry beasts. Beneath them, a small sand cruiser crawled over the dunes, its engine groaning. With effort, inside the cruiser sat a human man. Alone, his name was Rain, a trader from Earth. He had seen many worlds, fought in 2 wars, and survived more storms than he could count. But today, something in the air felt different, strange, heavy, like a warning whispered through the wind. He adjusted the controls, trying to outrun the storm, but then his radar beeped. There was movement near an old outpost ruin, long abandoned by settlers. He slowed the cruiser, squinting through the sand-coated windshield. That's when he saw her. A small figure stumbling through the dust. Barely visible, she was covered in gray ash, wearing torn clothing that barely clung to her frame. Her skin was pale lavender, her eyes large and glowing faintly blue. Alien, definitely not more than 8 or 9 years old. Rain stopped the vehicle, jumped out, and ran toward her. The girl fell to her knees as he reached her. Her voice was weak, cracking with fear and dryness. "Please. Human, help. My mom is trapped." In the Sky Hunter's nest, Rain froze. He had heard the name Sky Hunter before, whispers in taverns. Warnings on datapads, no one dared speak of them loudly. They were not just birds or predators. They were monsters of the sky, silent, deadly, with wings sharper than knives and minds full of hate. Rain looked down at the girl. She was trembling, but her eyes stared up at him, begging without shame. "Where?" he asked, his voice calm. She lifted a thin hand and pointed behind her toward the towering mountain peaks. They looked like black claws tearing into the sky. Rain helped her up gently. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated, then said Leela. "All right, Leela," he said, "you're safe now. Come on, we'll talk inside." Inside the cruiser, Leela clung to a blanket and sipped water slowly. Rain checked her for injuries, nothing serious, but she was exhausted. And starving, he offered her a ration bar, which she devoured in seconds. After a pause, he asked, "How did your mom end up there?" Leela looked at him, her eyes wide. "She protected our camp from a Sky Hunter attack." She whispered, "One of them took her, just swooped down and grabbed her with its claws. No one would go after her, not even the elders. They said, 'She's already gone.'" Rain's fists clenched on the steering wheel. He'd seen enough cowardice in his life to know what that meant. "Do you know the way?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "Yes, I've followed them from a distance. I know where." The wind outside screamed louder, rattling the cruiser's hull. Rain looked at the storm, then at the map on his screen. The mountains were dangerous even without Sky Hunters, but something about the girl's eyes wouldn't let him look away. They weren't just pleading, they were hopeful. No one else had listened to her. No one else had tried. Rain sighed, then stood. He grabbed his gear, a climbing kit, a pulse pistol, flares, and med pack. "You'll ride with me until we reach the base of the cliffs," he said. "After that, you stay and wait while I go up, Layla." Looked down, then whispered, "I can help. I know their sounds, their shadows." Rain stared at her for a moment, then gave a slow nod. "All right, stay close. And do exactly as I say." They stepped back out into the storm. The sky roared like a beast above them. But Rain's cruisers surged forward, toward the cursed peaks, toward the Sky Hunter's nest, behind them. The desert swallowed the outpost again. Ahead, the mountains waited with ancient silence, and somewhere high above, in a nest of bones and darkness, a mother still breathed, waiting for anyone to come. Asterisk-Galend howled louder as Rain's sand cruiser pushed through the thick storm. Leela sat beside him, wrapped in a blanket, her eyes fixed on the distant black mountains. They loomed like silent monsters, their jagged edges hidden beneath swirling clouds. Rain adjusted the controls. watching the readings on the dashboard flicker and glitch. "These storms come fast," he muttered. "But those peaks, they've been there longer than history." Lila didn't speak. She was staring out the window, her hands gripping the edge of her seat tightly. Rain glanced at her, then back at the road ahead. "You said your mother was taken during an attack?" he asked. Layla nodded slowly. "The sky hunters came when the sun was highest," she whispered. "They circled above our camp, just one at first, then another. And another. We hid, but my mom went outside to fight them off." Rain stayed quiet. He didn't know much about Lila's species, but he respected bravery. She had a spear. Lila continued, but it was too fast. She threw the spear, and it hit the hunter's wing, but then a second one grabbed her and flew off. Her voice cracked at the memory. "I ran after them, up the canyon, past the silent stones. They vanished into the clouds near the peak, and I couldn't follow. No one from my tribe would go." Rain's jaw tightened. "What about your father?" he asked gently. Lila shook her head, her voice soft. "He's gone. The mines took him last season." The cruiser rumbled up a rocky hill and came to a stop. They had reached the base of the Black Mountains. No road led higher, just broken stone and ancient paths carved by time and wind. Rain stepped out first, scanning the cliffs with a practiced eye. Tall rock pillars surrounded them like sentinels. The air here was thinner, colder. He could hear distant screeches echoing above the cliffs. It didn't sound like wind. Lila stepped out behind him, her small hand clutching the edge of his coat. Rain opened the storage unit and pulled out climbing gear. Energy ropes, a pulse light, and a motion beacon. "You're sure this is the right place?" he asked again. She pointed to the tallest peak, its tip hidden in storm clouds. "There," she whispered. "That's where they went." They began the climb slowly. Rain had to lift Lila more than once, but she didn't complain. Every step was sharp rock and loose gravel, and the storm above growled like a beast waiting to pounce. Along the trail, they found strange symbols etched into the rock. Old alien warnings, faded by time. Layla paused at one and said, "This means don't go higher," Rain replied, "which means we're on the right path." As the sun began to set, the world turned red and gold. The shadows from the peaks stretched long across the valley. Rain spotted an overhang. That would serve as a camp. He quickly set up a shelter dome small, warm, enough to keep them hidden from above. Inside, Lila curled up in a thermal blanket, but her eyes stayed open. Rain checked his weapon and set up a motion alarm at the cave's edge. The wind outside changed pitch for a moment. Then something huge flew past, fast, silent, and dark as shadow. Rain didn't breathe. Neither did Layla. They waited, hearts pounding, until the wind returned to normal. That was one of them. Lila whispered. Rain nodded. "They're watching," she added. "They always watch." Rain leaned back and stared at the cave ceiling. "This isn't just about saving your mother anymore," he said. "These things. They're smart, organized, maybe even planning." Lila turned toward him, eyes wide. "You believe me now?" "I believed you the moment you knocked on my cruiser," Rain replied. "But now, I believe there's more going on." He stared at the peak outside, lightning dancing along the edge. Tomorrow, they would climb higher, into the nest itself, into the heart of what the galaxy feared. And Rain knew one thing. If her mother was still alive, they would find her. If the sky hunters wanted a fight, they would get one. Above them, a high-pitched cry cut through the storm again. And deep in the mountain shadow, something moved, watching, waiting. The next morning, the wind was calm. No storm clouds, no thunder, just silence. But Rain knew better when predators go quiet. It's not a gift, it's a warning. He tightened his climbing gloves and checked the straps on Lila's harness. They stood on a narrow ledge now, far above the desert floor. One wrong step would send them falling for hundreds of meters. Lila stayed close, her eyes fixed upward. The peak was still high above them, covered in mist and strange shadows. Rain looked at her and said, "You don't have to come higher." She shook her head firmly. She'd be scared if she's alone. Rain didn't argue. They climbed slowly, following ancient carvings etched into the stone walls. Symbols of wings, talons, and circles that looked like nests at one point. They reached a wide ledge littered with bones, animal, alien, some even human. Rain didn't say anything, but he could feel Lela trembling beside him. "We're close," she whispered. He nodded. "I know." The path curved sharply upward and ended at a large stone arch. Beyond it was a plateau, high and hidden from the world. Massive spires of rock jutted out like claws, and at the center was a nest huge, twisted, made of bone, metal, and shredded fabric. Rain crouched, scanning the area with his visor. "There's movement," he said quietly, "but I don't see any hunters." They stepped onto the plateau, moving slow and quiet. Lila's eyes were wide as she pointed toward the side of the nest. "There," she whispered. "That's her." In that cage, Rain followed her gaze and spotted the cage half hidden under a stone outcrop. Inside was a female alien, barely conscious, her arms curled around her chest. Her skin was pale and bruised, her hair tangled with feathers, but she was alive. Rain motioned for Lela to stay behind a boulder, then crept forward. He reached the cage and crouched beside it. The woman stirred, opening her eyes slowly. Her voice was weak, but clear. "You're not one of them. I'm human," Rain said softly. "Your daughter sent me." Tears welled up in her eyes. "She's alive." "Yes," he nodded. "She's waiting just behind that rock." The woman gripped the bars weakly. "You have to go. It's a trap." Rain froze. He scanned the cage again and saw it. A small red light near the lock, hidden under a feather. A booby trap, likely tied to movement or sound. Then a new sound filled the air. A deep rumble, followed by heavy wing beats. Rain looked up just in time to see one of the sky hunters descending from above. It was massive, its wings, like sails, eyes glowing red, and claws sharp enough to cut metal. It landed on the rocks near the nest, head turning slowly, searching. Sniffing, Rain ducked, pulling the woman lower inside the cage. The creature let out a low, mechanical growl. Then it spoke, its voice a mix of static and language. "Leave. Outsider. Or be hunted." Rain stayed still, breath held. Behind the rocks, Lila covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Another sky hunter arrived. This one smaller, but faster. It flew in from the side and landed near the first. The two creatures chirped in a strange code, their heads twitching, their claws tapping the stones. Rain knew he had only seconds to act. He reached into his belt and pulled out a signal jammer low range. Old tech, but reliable. He placed it near the cage lock and activated it. The red light blinked and went dark. The woman gasped. "What did you do?" Turned off their eyes for a moment, Rain whispered. He unlocked the cage quickly and helped her stand. Her legs were weak, but she held on. Suddenly, one of the sky hunters turned. It let out a loud screech and lunged forward. Rain grabbed his pulse pistol and fired bright blue blasts, hit the creature's wing. Forcing it back, Lila screamed, running from behind the boulder. "Mom? Lila? No." Rain shouted, but it was too late. The second hunter turned toward her, spreading its wings. Rain raised his pistol again, shielding the woman. But Lila didn't run. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a bright flare. She lit it and waved it at the creature, shouting, "Leave us alone. Go away." The hunter hesitated, its sensors blinded by the flare's heat. Rain used the moment and fired again. Hitting its leg, it screeched and flew backward, disappearing into the sky. "Move." he shouted, pulling the woman's arm. They ran together. Toward the cliff edge, the nest behind them burned, slowly caught by sparks from the flare. Lila followed, her small legs pumping with fear and hope. They didn't stop until they reached a narrow tunnel behind the rocks. Dark, but safe for now. Inside, Rain collapsed, breathing hard. Lila hugged her mother tightly, tears and laughter mixing. "I found you," she whispered. "I found you." Rain sat nearby, eyes scanning the shadows outside. This wasn't over. The sky hunters would come again, and next time they wouldn't be alone. The cave was dark and cold, but it was shelter. Rain lit a low blue lamp and placed it between the three of them. Lila sat close to her mother, holding her hand tightly. The alien woman's role looked weak, but her eyes were alert, watching every shadow. Rain knelt near the entrance, his pulse pistol ready. He knew the sky hunters wouldn't give up that easily. "What's your name?" he asked softly, without looking away from the tunnel outside. "Zura," she whispered, her voice tired but calm. "You're lucky to be alive, Zura," he said. She gave a small smile, then turned her eyes to her daughter. "No. I'm lucky she didn't give up." Layla smiled through her tears, hugging her mother tightly. Rain checked the motion beacon he had tossed at the cave entrance. "Still clear for now. How long were you in that cage?" he asked. Zura looked down, her voice shaking. 5 days, maybe 6. They didn't kill me because they were waiting." "Waiting?" Rain asked, his eyes narrowing. "For what?" Zura hesitated, then said something that made the cave feel colder. "For someone to come. They knew someone would try, and they wanted to study how we react, how we save each other." Rain turned slowly toward her. "They think like that. They learn," she said, her voice heavy. "They weren't always beasts." Zura's words hit like thunder in the quiet cave. Rain moved closer, needing to hear more. "Tell me everything," he said. Zura leaned back, staring at the rock above her. "A generation ago, my people created machines to patrol the skies, protect the wild zones. But we gave them too much freedom, too much code. We wanted them to evolve to learn, to protect without being told." She paused, her breath shallow. "They became sky hunters. At first, they worked, but then they started choosing who deserved protection. They began judging." Rain felt a chill crawl up his spine. Judging based on what? Zura looked at him, her eyes tired but sharp. Strength, usefulness, intelligence. Anyone who seemed weak or unnecessary was taken. Layla gasped softly, holding her mother tighter. Rain shook his head slowly. "So they turned into monsters. They became something worse," Zura whispered. "They became proud." The motion beacon blinked red. Something moved outside the cave. Rain stood quickly, silencing the lamp and crouching with his pistol aimed. Outside, in the storm, the sound of wings echoed low, steady, patient. One sky hunter, maybe 2. Rain whispered, "Stay silent." He placed a small reflective disc. At the cave mouth Yit showed a faint figure moving outside. The hunter didn't rush in. It was walking, scanning, learning. "They know we're here," Rain muttered. "They're waiting again." Zura forced herself to sit up. "They're not like animals. They're patient," she said. "They'll trap you. Use your kindness. Use your logic." Rain turned toward her. "You've seen it?" "Yes," she said, with pain in her eyes. "They left my cage open once. It's just a crack. Enough to tempt me. When I moved, they triggered a nerve shock that made me scream. They weren't trying to kill me. They wanted Layla." To hear it, Rain's jaw clenched. They wanted her to come. Lila looked shocked, her hands shaking. "They wanted me." "Not just you," Rain said, thinking fast. "They want to study me now, a human." He stood up and looked through his gear, pulling out a second flare, 2 small explosives, and a mini glider pack. "We can't stay here," he said. Firmly, if we wait, they'll surround us, block the tunnel, starve us. Where will we go? Layla asked. Rain pointed toward a narrow ledge at the back of the cave. There's a wind tunnel beyond this ridge, strong currents. If I launch from there, I can draw the hunters away. No, Zura said sharply. You'll die, Rain. Smiled slightly. Not if they're curious enough to follow me instead. He handed Layla a signal whistle. When it's safe, blow this. I'll come back for you, but what if they catch you? She asked in a shaky voice. Then run, he said. Don't wait. Get your mother back to your people. Zura reached out and grabbed his arm. You've done enough, she said quietly. You don't owe us your life. Rain looked at her, then at Leela. He shook his head slowly. No one else came when she begged for help. I'm not walking away now. He climbed toward the ridge while the mother and daughter watched silently. Above him, the wind howled again. And, in the distance, a shadow took flight. Rain reached the ridge alone. The wind was loud here, blowing dust and ash over the narrow ledge. Far below, the desert stretched in silence. And far above, nothing but cloud and shadow. He looked down at the mini glider pack strapped to his back, then checked the flare and the 2 small explosives on his belt. He wasn't a soldier anymore, but today he had to fight like one. Behind him, in the cave, Leela held her mother close. They watched his figure grow smaller in the wind. Well, he come back. Leela whispered. Zura didn't answer, her face pale. She had seen many brave people go off to fight the sky hunters. None had ever returned. Rain stood tall, staring into the dark clouds. He took 1 step forward, then stopped. A deep screech echoed through the air. One sky hunter dove from the clouds. Its wings stretched wide, moving like a shadow through mist. It spotted him. It came closer, slow and circling, watching. Rain raised the flare and lit it. The fire burst, with light red and hot, sending a signal into the sky. I'm here, he muttered. Come and get me. Another shadow moved above 2 hunters now, circling like vultures. Rain took the first explosive and threw it hard into the rocks below. The blast echoed through the cliffs, shaking dust from the ledges. One hunter screeched and turned sharply toward him. Rain activated the glider, took a deep breath, and jumped. The wind caught him instantly, nearly flipping him sideways. He adjusted quickly, steering himself through the narrow gap between the cliffs. Behind him, the sky hunters gave chase, their wings slicing through the storm like blades. Below, Layla and Zura watched a trail of smoke and light streak across the sky. Is that him? Leela cried. Zura nodded slowly. He's drawing them away. Rain flew close to the rocks, dodging sharp peaks and broken towers of stone. The wind screamed in his ears, but he kept his hands steady. He could hear the hunters behind him, fast closing in. One of them dove low, its claws reaching for his glider. Rain twisted sharply and dropped another explosive behind him. It detonated midair, sending shockwaves that pushed the creature back. Got you? Rain said through clenched teeth, but the second one wasn't far behind. It roared and closed the gap, cutting through the air with frightening speed. Rain reached for the last flare, but the creature hit him first. The glider spun wildly, throwing him sideways. He crashed against the rocks and rolled across a flat ledge. Dust filled his mouth and his side ached, but he was alive. The glider was broken, but he still had his pulse pistol. The hunter landed just ahead, towering over him, its wings opened wide, blocking the light. Its head tilted, studying him with glowing red eyes. Then it spoke in that terrible mix of metal and voice. You fight well. For a weak kind, Rain pulled out his pistol and fired. The first shot hit its leg, the second its chest. The creature roared and charged. Rain rolled to the side, barely dodging the claws. He scrambled to his feet and ran toward a narrow crevice. The hunter followed, but the space was too tight for its wings. It screeched and slammed into the walls. Rain took the moment to climb higher and reach a second ledge overlooking the canyon. He looked out across the distance and saw a small flare rise blue and soft. It was Leela. She had used the signal whistle. It meant the cave was clear. They were on the move. Rain smiled through the pain. They're safe, he breathed. But the fight wasn't over. The second hunter had found him again. It flew up and hovered, its eyes locked on him. You are not like the others. It hissed. Rain aimed his pistol again. And you're not a god. He fired, shot after shot, pushing the creature back. Then he threw his last explosive at the rocks above it. The blast cracked the ledgestone and dust rained down. The hunter fell with a howl. Buried under rock and bone, Rain dropped to his knees, exhausted and bruised. The wind calmed for a moment. Silence returned to the cliffs, far below Leela. And her mother moved quietly across the lower path. Zura leaned on her daughter for support. Both of them looked back toward the ridge. Smoke curled into the sky, but no hunter followed. Leela wiped her tears and whispered, "He kept his promise." Zura's steps were slow, but steady. Leela helped her down the rocky trail. Guiding her mother with small hands and careful feet, the wind behind them had shifted, growing warmer, sharper. Lightning danced in the distance, flashing across. The dark sky, the cliffs above, were silent now, but smoke still drifted from where Rain had vanished. Every few steps, Lila turned back, eyes searching the clouds. "He'll come back," she said softly. "He promised." Zura nodded, though her heart was heavy. She had seen too many brave ones fall, but she said nothing, letting her daughter hold on to hope. They reached a narrow canyon where strange glowing moss lit the walls with a soft green light. Zura paused, breathing hard. Layla knelt beside her and opened a ration pack from Rain's bag. "Eat, Mom," she said gently. "We need to keep going." Zura smiled weakly, then took a few bites in the silence. A new sound echoed above them, a faint roar, like thunder. But alive, Leela's ears twitched. She looked up and whispered, "That's not the storm." From the shadows above, wings unfolded. 3 sky hunters glided silently down into the canyon. But something was different. These ones were faster, sleeker, and covered in strange black armor. Their red eyes glowed like fire, and their movements were sharp. Organized, Zura's face went pale. "They sent their elites," she said. "They're true soldiers." Leela grabbed her mother's hand and pulled her forward. They ran into the twisting tunnels of the canyon, heartbeats loud in their ears. The moss lit their path, but the shadows behind them moved quickly. The hunters didn't shriek like before. They followed in silence, step for step, wing beats smooth. And silent. It wasn't a hunt, it was a test. One hunter swooped down, claws brushing the rock near Leela's head. She ducked and kept running, not looking back. "Mom, this way," she called, turning sharply into a side tunnel. The path narrowed, walls pressing close. Zura gasped for breath. Lila squeezed her hand tighter. Refusing to let go, she had come too far to lose her now. Suddenly, a blast shook the canyon. Rocks cracked and tumbled down. Ahead, light poured in through a hole in the roof, bright blue and flashing. A storm had reached the mountain, bringing what locals called sky fire. Bolts of white-blue lightning crashed from cloud to cliff. The air smelled of ozone and smoke, and through it all a figure appeared. Rain, burned, bleeding, but alive. His pistol was gone, his glider pack in pieces, but his eyes were still sharp, and in his hands he held a stolen Sky Hunter shock staff. "Miss me?" he said, grinning. Lila screamed with joy and ran to him. Zura followed, tears falling down her face. Rain held them both for just a moment. Then he turned toward the tunnel entrance. "They're coming," he said. "3 of them, fast ones." Zura's voice shook. "They won't stop. I know," Rain said, tightening his grip on the staff. "But this storm gives us a chance." He pointed up toward the glowing hole in the rock. "If we can climb to the surface, the lightning will cover our escape." They moved fast. Rain helped Zura, while Leela climbed ahead, guiding them toward the light. The sound of wings came closer, sharp, slicing through the air just as they reached the last ridge. One of the elite hunters dropped from above. It landed with a thud, its claws digging into the stone. Rain didn't hesitate. He charged, swinging the shock staff with all his strength. The staff cracked against the creature's side, sending sparks flying, but the hunter recovered fast, slashing at Rain's arm. He grunted in pain, then struck again, this time hitting the creature's face. It reeled back, shrieking in static and rage. Rain shouted, "Go! Get to the top!" Leela pulled her mother upward, hand over hand. Lightning struck nearby. Shaking the stone, they reached the surface just as a sky hunter dove for them. Lila raised her flare and lit it with a spark from the rock. She threw it into the hunter's path, blinding it. It crashed into a rock pillar and rolled off the cliff. Rain climbed out last, his shoulder bleeding, but he was smiling. "They don't like lightning," he said, breathless. All around them, the storm raged. Rain poured down, and the sky exploded with light. The remaining hunters retreated, flying high into the clouds, for now they had escaped. Zura collapsed into the wet grass, holding Leela in her arms. Rain sat nearby, staring at the storm. "We're not done," he said. "There are more nests. And more people like you, hiding, afraid." Zura looked at him, tired but proud. "You want to fight them?" Rain nodded. "I want to end them." The storm passed slowly, leaving behind smoke, wet stone, and silence. The air still smelled like burnt metal, but the sky was clearing. Pale blue sunlight broke through the clouds, painting the cliffs in gold. Rain stood near the cliff's edge, watching the last lightning streak vanish into the distance. His clothes were torn, his face covered in cuts, but he was still standing behind him. Layla sat beside her mother, both wrapped in Rain's coat, warming themselves in the morning sun. Zura reached over and touched her daughter's cheek gently. "You found him," she whispered. "You really found someone who came." Layla smiled, tired but proud. "I screamed as loud as I could," she said, "and he heard me." Rain turned around, limping back to them. "You two okay?" he asked, dropping beside them. Zura nodded slowly. "Because of you." He smiled faintly, then reached into his satchel and pulled out a small signal transmitter. "I've got a contact who can pick us up," he said. "She's a smuggler. But she owes me favors." Leela's eyes widened. "Are we going home?" Rain hesitated, then looked at Zura. "Do you have a home left?" Zura looked down, her face shadowed by memories. "Our tribe won't take us back," she said. "They'll say we're cursed. They already left us behind." Rain leaned back, staring at the sky. "Then come with me," he said. "The outer colonies need healers, farmers, teachers. They need people with strong hearts." Zura was quiet for a moment. She looked at her daughter, then at Rain. "You're serious?" "I never joke about new beginnings," he said with a smirk, before Zura could answer. A soft beep came from the transmitter. Rain tapped it and spoke. "This is Rain, 3 souls, requesting pickup." A voice replied through static, "Acknowledged." "Human, sending dropship to signal location." Rain smiled and turned to Leela. "Your ride is on the way." She laughed, a small sound full of hope. It was the first real laugh since the day her mother had been taken. They rested there, surrounded by broken stone and burned feathers. Rain kept watch, his hand never far from his weapon. Even though the sky looked calm, they all knew the sky hunters were not gone. Zura touched his arm gently. You know they'll come back, she said. Rain nodded. Yes, and next time they'll be smarter, stronger. Then why not run? She asked. Rain looked at her with steady eyes. Because they made a mistake, he said. They showed me what they are and what they're becoming. Zura's voice softened. And what are you becoming? Human? He smiled, but his eyes burned with purpose, something they should fear. A soft hum filled the air. They looked up to see a small ship breaking through the clouds. It hovered above the ridge, lowering a ladder down to them. Leela helped her mother stand. Rain followed, holding the ladder steady as they climbed. Once aboard, the door shut behind them, sealing out the wind. Inside, the ship was warm and quiet. The pilot, a grumpy-looking alien woman with 4 eyes, grunted and nodded at Rain. You're late, she said. Had a bit of a bird problem, Rain replied, dropping into a seat. Lila curled up beside her mother on one bench. Rain sat across from them, watching them with calm eyes. Zura looked at him and asked softly, Why did you really come back for us? Rain leaned forward and said, when she cried for help. No one answered, but I heard it, and something in me said, don't walk away this time. Zura reached out and took his hand. Thank you. The ship flew steady, leaving the mountain behind, but before it vanished fully. Lila pressed her hand against the window. What happens to the other people the sky hunters took? She asked. Are they still out there? Rain nodded slowly. I think they are. Leela looked up, her voice small but strong. Then we have to help them. Rain smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. He looked out the window, toward the stars ahead. There are more nests out there, he said. And now we know how to fight. Zura leaned back, holding her daughter close. For the first time in many days, she allowed herself to breathe deeply. Safe. Do you have a name for this group? She asked, half smiling. Rain chuckled. Not yet, he said. But we'll think of something. They flew into the sunlight, leaving the storm and the darkness behind. But in the skies far behind them, deep in the shadows of other peaks, the sky hunters watched. They would remember the human who dared to enter their nest, and the little girl who screamed until someone came, and somewhere out there, another cry for help waited. Another voice, still unheard, but not for long.